Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And happy Saturday to you. And hopefully, you guys, if you guys are getting a lot of snow, hopefully, you guys are sitting somewhere warm. And hopefully, you guys are excited as I am to dive into this conversation today. As always, I have an amazing guest for you guys. She has an amazing story, and I'm kind of jealous because she just got back from cross seas and everything. But we'll talk about that, okay, you guys. Now, before I bring her up here, I want to say that if this is your first time tuning in, the YouTube channel is down there below. Do me a favor, head on over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And as always, this is live stream. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go along. Now, before I bring her up here, I have one more thing I have to say is that this is for educational purposes only. Now, without further ado, you guys help me welcome my next guest, Demarra. Demarra, how we doing?
I'm doing great, Tony. I am so glad to be with you today and on a beautiful fall day from Detroit, Michigan.
Oh man, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. So now before we get started, and by the way, welcome to the show. Thank you for
Thank you. I
being
am
up
so
today.
glad. I'm
I
so
know
glad.
you've been a busy woman traveling all over the place and everything. So, I feel pretty privileged that you can squeeze me in today. So I'm really, really excited. Now, before we get started, introduce yourself, tell people where you're from and about the work that you do.
Absolutely. So again, Demarra West, and so grateful to be in sacred space with you today, Tony. I'll always make the time for you and the great work that you're doing. So as I said before, I hail you from Detroit, Michigan. I've been a therapist and a holistic practitioner for many, many years, starting with my first journey into the mental health space 14 years ago. And from that point, became a Reiki master and teacher and a yoga teacher and trained in all things trauma, and wrote my first book called Me Too, A Therapist's Journey to Heal, Find Liberation and Joy in December. And so my work is really focused on accessible wellness for the people that need it the most, ultimately those groups that have been most susceptible, most impacted by trauma. So we focus on trauma recovery, trauma advocacy in the form of therapy, leadership development, which, coaching is included in that, racial healing, organizational wellness assessments and strategy, and wellness workshops and day and overnight retreats, and eventually plan to open up a fully financially accessible from market rate on down to pro bono for individuals and institutions who need mental health support and wellness support the most. So that's a little bit about me. There's so much more I could say, but that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, we're gonna dive into that because we could have talked forever too, right?
Yes, we
So
did.
I'm really excited about that. And then we're gonna get into your trip because I'm living vicariously through you now.
Oh my gosh, no, you do not need to live vicariously through me. I always tell people, do not. I'm actually doing a travel workshop at the end of November that I can talk to people about all of these travel hacks, right? And these tips that I've acquired over the years. And, traveling is much more accessible than what we even believe that it is, right? And so, currently I think I've been to 37 countries across 6 continents and have 4 more countries that I'm going to already next year. And I just can't get enough of travel. It does things to support your well-being and, get you connected to amazing people and new palettes, new ways of being and seeing the world. And so, as you know, I just got back from Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Zambia, a life-changing trip on numerous levels.
I'm already knowing. As you were saying that, I was like, I wonder if you got the chance to ride the zebras.
No, I did not ride the zebras, but I walked with lions.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
And I danced in Victoria Falls. There was actually these 2 guys that were set up in the falls area on the Zimbabwe side. And you could get a video done, like dance. You know how they have those, what do they call it? Those motion videos.
Yeah.
So I'm just grooving with the falls in the background. That was a lot of fun. I rhino tracked at the only national park that you can do that in the entire world. That was amazing, and had a lot of other just deeply profound experiences, including spending a half day at a village with about 120 young people. And it both warmed my heart and heavied it at the same time. And, really helped me to appreciate more of what I'm called to do in the world. So, yeah, it was great.
That's truly, truly exciting. Now, let's dive into your story
Okay.
about who Demarra was before you got into the mental health field, right? And then let's talk. When you get done doing that, I want to talk a little bit more of what was your deciding factor to get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I was younger, I always knew that I wanted to work with young people in some shape or form. In fact, I thought that I was going to become a pediatrician. And as a young person who grew up with trauma, that was long before we were really naming it trauma, they were in the field, right? But in terms of having that be a part of our universal language and talking about people's lived experiences with, witnessing a parent being abused by a caretaker, or being sexually assaulted, or being abused or neglected, And so I knew that I had these experiences, and these experiences eventually led me to becoming a therapist. But what I didn't really realize was that I had a lot of work to do on myself. And, I was convinced, because I had grown up in poverty, that as long as I could get out of poverty, I was going to be okay. Right. So that's what I did. I knew that education was going to be a way for me to do that. And I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And eventually I got married and became a mother and started my business. I became an entrepreneur even 2 years before I became a therapist, and did a lot of other community-based work. And so I was really convinced that I was removed from my background, right? And that even though I knew that it was a driver for me to become a therapist, so it was actually not until years later, as I found myself in the holistic healing space, where I was being called to support women through a body of work called Be Well, Beautiful Woman, in helping women to center their healing and liberation so that they can lead and live on their own terms. And, as the saying goes, that when we seek out to heal the world, we realize that we have healing to do ourselves, essentially. And so as I immerse myself in getting trained in all these holistic practices, these were the holistic practices that I started to use on myself. And it helped me to come to terms with some things that I didn't even know that I needed to come to terms with. And so that really set me on a trajectory of healing. And after 26 years of, writing on again, off again, I finally wrote my first book called Me Too, A Therapist's Journey to Heal, Find Liberation and Joy, in December, which is about my lived experience with complex childhood trauma, having 8 out of 10 what we call adverse childhood experiences, and 13 out of 15 of what's called the expanded version, which includes things like bullying, witnessing community violence, racialized oppression, and things of that nature. So I'm sure there's so much that we could talk about within that frame, but that was essentially what set me on a trajectory. And so I ended up doing school-based, home-based therapy because, again, I knew that I always wanted to work with young people. I also founded the Children's Defense Fund Freedom Schools program, the Kalamazoo chapter, to address the achievement gap that many Black and Brown students experience as a result of, all kinds of systemic issues in the school to prison pipeline. And again, I knew that my background drove me to do these things. I just didn't know that Me Too, which is why I named my book what I did, that that I needed to do a lot of healing. And what's so interesting about this, Tony, is that many people that are therapists and that are in the helping profession have experienced trauma, because it's so universal. 70% of the US population alone has experienced at least one traumatic episode within their lifetime. And then you have people like me who experience a lot more than that, right? So, and that are doing really amazing work, but haven't done the work to heal themselves. So that's in part why I wrote the book, for survivors, for people like me that are out there that haven't done the work, but also for systems to really have an understanding of what people like me might be going through, and the sacred work that they have to do to help get survivors to a place of healing as soon as possible, based on, of course, their choice to heal, essentially.
Now, My question would be, because I run across a lot of therapists. I run across a lot of people in the mental health field, in the in the trauma informed practitioner field as well, that have not fully healed, right? And so I watch how they move, things like that. And I've had to pull a couple of them off to the side and say, hey, you might want to rethink what you're doing, things like that, because you're about to do a lot of damage to the individual that you're talking to, because the individual that you're talking to, you're speaking as if they're on your level, right? But I'm also hearing a lot of pain in your voice as well.
Mhm.
So maybe just back up a little bit, because this may be a trigger warning, or don't be afraid to go and grab someone else to come and be in this space with this individual.
Yeah.
And now I say that to ask this question: do you find a lot of that with individuals as well in the field?
So what I want to respond to this in a couple different ways. The first thing that I want to say is that healing is not a place that we arrive at, right?
Right,
And depending on how deep a wound is, we may be massaging that wound across our lifespan, right?
yes.
And so we can think about grief, right? When we lose someone that we love or something that we love, there may be moments that that loss still brings us to grave sadness, right? Like I don't imagine a time that, even though my father's been gone for 11 years, or excuse me, for 10 years, and my grandmother's been gone for 11 years, I don't imagine a time when I'm not going to be moved to sorrow periodically about their loss, right? Because I miss them in physical form.
Right.
Now, what I want to say also though is that healing, because healing is a journey and because we don't arrive at healing, if we haven't faced certain things from our past that have caused us grave pain that we can name as trauma, then we can be rest assured that we're doing damage to ourselves and we're doing damage to the world.
Hmm.
I think it's always an invitation, right? We've got to normalize first that, in the upwards of 70%, just like 70% of the US population has been affected by at least one traumatic episode, roughly 70% of the helping profession has trauma themselves.
Right.
So if we haven't looked at the ways we have been affected by trauma, the drivers by which that we have entered into the field to help people, and done that work on ourselves, then we can be rest assured that in some shape or form, eventually we are going to begin doing harm. Because when we experience things, and this is, when trauma happens to someone, it's not just the trauma itself that harms people, it's the aftermath of the trauma. If we have nowhere to put the pain that
Mm.
we just absorbed from this experience that has rocked us to our core, right?
Right.
And so it has to go somewhere. And what research shows is that trauma literally lives in the body on a cellular level when we don't get it out. This is why when we're on the massage table sometimes and the therapist touches us in a certain spot, we have this emotional release. The same thing can happen during yoga or during Reiki, because everything is about energy. Emotions are energy in motion.
Right.
If we don't get out what we're feeling on a regular basis, then we can be rest assured that certain things are living on the inside of us. And if they're living on the inside of us, they're in the driver's seat in some shape or form in our lives.
Right.
And I'll give you a great example before I turn it over to you. The other day I was talking to someone who I've known for a while. They spent some time being incarcerated, and they have been out for a while now and are in the work, actively working in their brilliance to help individuals that have been impacted by incarceration. And so I simply called to say, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? And me asking them, how are you feeling, sent them into a tizzy. They were triggered so deeply by this simple question that was pure. My intention was pure, just to say, hey, how are you? What's going on in your world? And to the point where they had to remove themselves from the phone call because I disrupted their day with a question as simple as, how are you feeling? Now, on the surface, this person, no one would know this unless you're in their inner world, and unless you happen to be the person triggering them. You don't know that this person is walking around with deep wounds that can be triggered by something so simple. So that's an example of the ways in which trauma can still play out in our lives and be so disruptive to building relationships, to keeping our jobs, to living our lives as abundantly as we decide, to choosing peace and joy, to all kinds of things, right? Because we are the, encapsulation of many parts. And if any parts of who we are being disrupted because we haven't done the work of working through our trauma, then the invitation is to do the work so that we can.
Now, I love that you had brought that up, because what I've seen a lot of times is that a lot of people, sometimes, not all the time, and I'm not gonna say a lot of people, but some people are afraid to do the work, right? Because when you make the decision to start the healing process, the healing hurts, right? It's very revealing. And what I find a lot of times is that during that process, it's like an onion. Everything begins to unravel. It begins to unfold, and a lot of things that you thought that maybe you had forgot. And I think this is because the brain is designed to keep us safe, right?
Right.
It's designed to not want you to have to deal with those things, and so it is stored, right? It is definitely stored, and so what I find that when these people come, when a lot of these individuals come and begin that process, they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't know. Oh my God, I didn't remember this." Right, and it starts a whole new path that they have to go down in order to start to address those things. Now, for me, and this is just for me, I find that to be a beautiful thing, because it's saying that, hey, you're now starting to be honest with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're now holding yourself accountable to go in and address this thing that you've been hiding for so long from everyone. And like you said, I recently, I'm gonna share. I don't share this with too many people, but I now I'm to a point where I share with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a trigger come up, and I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of it at all, right? And what that ended up happening, my younger cousin just passed away on Halloween,
Mm.
and listening to my sister is what really opened my wound up, right? And it triggered me, because listening to the way that she sounded, it hurt my heart, right? And then it took me to a place where I almost had forgotten. I thought I had done a lot of the healing work, but I'm glad that it came about, because I was able to go in and address it. But it took me to a place where I lost some years ago, probably about 25, 26 years ago, I lost a good friend of mine. And he popped up in my head when it happened, because when he had passed away, and he was in prison
Mm.
when he passed away, and he was killed by a skinhead.
Mm. I'm so
They
sorry.
got into a fight, and the skinhead broke him off in half and stabbed him in the chest, and actually got away with it. And I remember when I got the news, I was sitting with his mom, and so she never got the phone call. We actually saw it on TV. She goes, "Is that my son?" And that's all I can really remember, because I turned around and I saw his face, and I was like, "Oh no!" And I turned around and I grabbed her, because she was going down. His sisters and brothers were falling to pieces. So Fast forward in that moment, listen to my sister, my heart hurt because it reminded me of that moment.
Mhm.
Now, I didn't know how the two correlated with one another, but I realized it was something that I had very deep down inside of me and never addressed.
Yeah.
Right.
That was the correlation. You're the correlation.
Mm.
We're the correlation.
Weird correlation.
And one of the things that we discover as we go on our journey, and this is congruent with self-actualizing, which many of us never get to the place of self-actualization.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's always more for us to discover about who we are. There's always more to be revealed about areas that we haven't dealt with yet. And there's no way to know unless we're living life,
Right.
right? It's the unfolding of life that is the revealer of the truths that we're being invited to face always, so that we can consistently be the highest versions of who we are,
Right.
of who we were created to be. And so when people say, when is this healing journey gonna stop? Right? I always chuckle to myself because it doesn't stop
No.
unless we choose for it to stop, because we choose no longer to do the work. And the work is not what we always think that it is. It can be something simple as meditating or journaling or doing the 40-day prosperity plan or using affirmations or spending time in prayer or being in nature or grounding. Anytime that we're creating space to be still and in communion with self,
Hmm.
we are ultimately in communion with God, universe, source, creator. We are ultimately healing. Anytime we have a good night's rest, we're healing.
Right.
Anytime we're engaged in meaningful conversation, we're healing. Anytime we listen to music that uplifts our spirits, we're healing. And so, one of the things that I invite people to think about is not the hardship of the path to heal, but more so the journey to healing and what will be exposed about self and what we will be able to access as a result of that. Because we know what it feels like to be where we are.
Hmm.
And the reason why people choose the path of least resistance, or in other words, the path of staying the same, is because, and I learned this a long time ago when I first became a therapist 14 years ago, that just because people talk about change, just because people talk about how much pain that they're in, it doesn't mean that they're actually ready to do anything about it.
Right. Right. Yes. Yeah.
Right? So it's one thing to acknowledge that you're suffering. It's different to say, I'm suffering and I'm not going to suffer anymore. And I'm going to do whatever it takes for me to get out of this suffering, because I know that there is something better on the other side.
Yes.
But as you said it, Tony, in order to get to the better on the other side, we have to get to the dark before we can get to the light.
Hmm.
But even getting to the dark, as we are meandering to the light, we can experience a lot of light on the pathway as we are going on the journey.
Hmm.
Because as the saying goes, this too shall pass. We don't cry forever. Pain doesn't last forever unless we are choosing the pathway of pain,
Hmm.
pathway of suffering. There's a quote in the Course in Miracles that says something to the effect of this, like, I can choose this or I can choose peace. Why do we choose to suffer on top of the suffering?
Mm.
Right? There is something that we get from the suffering. Let's be real. There's something that we get from sitting in pain. There's something that we get in victimhood. There's something that we get from anything in life. Anything yields something. But the question becomes, what ultimately do we want to yield for our life? And if and the reality is that we are all worthy of peace and joy and financial prosperity and living a life beyond our dreams and not having to live vicariously through anyone else if we are willing to do the work.
Right. Yes.
That's all that it comes down to. And as you said, Tony, the work is something that never stops because as we work, more revelations come to pass.
Yes. Yes.
There's never a time when that doesn't stop. There's never a time like creativity doesn't cease to exist.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that.
Exist. Solutions don't cease to exist. Friendships don't cease to exist. Partnerships don't cease to exist. Right? We are always available to access the more that is already right here in our lives, but we have to do the work to be able to clear the fog so that we can see and hear clearly the ways in which the God, universe, source, creator is always speaking to us, is always unfolding right before us so that we can keep rising.
I want to add to that because you're absolutely right. And the one thing, part of the thing that I've been pretty fortunate in finding out about myself is that I'm able to have one-on-one time with my soul, right? To allow it to be free into the world, to travel, to meet other like-minded souls like it, but to also be happy, right? Through connection, because we are part of it. It is us, right? And once we understand that how we all intertwine with one another, and that we do share these experiences. This allows us, at least for myself, this allows me to be able to connect with people on a level in their journey that is very rewarding, not for just for myself, but for the individual that I'm with in that space with them, right? Because being still, learning to slow my heart rate down, learning to quiet my mind to where there is nothing except for the space. The energy that we share, I will feel their vibration. If they're on a lower vibration, then I'm able to share my vibration with them and go, hey, let's come up a little bit, right? And I know that in that moment with them, however long it may be with them, that when I leave them, that they are going to be a lot better than when I found them. That has always been my goal and will always be my goal, right? Because I am a servant. I believe that this is, like you said, this is what we're called to do, right? I am called to be with you in your darkest moments. I am called to be with you when you're struggling to get up and you don't have enough fight in you. And I often tell them, hey, take what I have and use it and breathe for a little bit, right? And if you need to sit down for a little bit, that's fine. And when you're ready to get up, there's no rush. When you're ready to get up, I'll get up with you. And then I think it's that human soul connection that's there that gives them that strength to hold on to a little bit of what I have, right? Until they're able to be strong enough to develop their own.
Yes. That's beautiful. Well, and that's what we have light for. We have light for self, but it's for the world, right? It has to be for self first and then for the world. And that continuous cycle of pouring in to pour out is something that is a part of our healing and liberation journey. And, when I think about particularly showing up in spaces where I'm facilitating a retreat, let's say, or I'm doing a training, or I'm speaking at a conference, and every single person there, they're relying on my light, right? They're relying on me to bring something that is going to impart something to them. And so then in those moments, right, that means that I have to make sure that I have my cup is full enough so that I can do what I need to do for them and so that I don't harm myself in the process, right? And vice versa. And like, because as you said, and this is one of the things that I didn't say earlier about therapists, we can do harm. I mean, any person can do real harm, and if we're not careful. And so even when it comes to trauma, one of the things that I tell people is that you want to assess, is this therapist trauma informed? Have they actually been trained in trauma? What kind of experience do they have? What kind of success stories have they seen as a result of their work? And how have they done their own work? Not that it's your job as a client, the therapist shouldn't be telling you about all of their life, but what there should be an acknowledgement that they believe in therapy and they have done their work. They have a clear understanding about the importance of investing in therapy to support their efficacy as a therapist. Now, what I want to also recognize is that therapy is, although I believe in it tenaciously, and that was my first mode of entry when it came to this healing space, there are lots of ways for people to access healing. And one of the things that I focus on tenaciously in my work is about self-healing, because, although investing external of ourselves to get support is important, I have done that on several occasions. In fact, I'll probably be hiring a coach that I've worked with on a few different occasions, again, after the first of the year, to do some work with me based on the season that I'm in. So I've worked with coaches, I've had therapists, I've had all kind of support over the years, but the number one support that is available to me is the support for myself. Right? So every morning, for example, before I get out of bed, I do Reiki on myself. Not to mention, so today it was Reiki. I journaled for a while. I'm doing the 40-day prosperity plan. I've actually been doing it this entire year because I've gone through rapid change, and I knew that spirit was, inviting me to have this tenacious, consistent daily practice to keep me grounded in the midst of rapid change. So I didn't lose my shit,
Yeah, most definitely. There we go.
The reality is that we are human. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. But if we don't cultivate the spiritual aspect of who we are, then what we're going to be is having more of a human experience in spiritual form versus a spiritual experience in human form.
Yes. And I love that you said that. And again, I want to add to that, because I think a lot of times what people become afraid and things like that along that journey to even have that human experience, because the human experience can be very painful depending on how their life has been. Right? You and I both know we've both have experienced extreme traumas and multiple losses, and we've had to do a lot of work. Was it easy? No, it's not easy. What I find the biggest struggle is getting people to let go of that safety net that they built with themselves in order to keep themselves safe. Right. And what I mean by that, being afraid to go out and do, and I say that to say this because I used to do this for the longest time. I really dislike going out in public. I really did. I really disliked going out in public because in my younger years, every time I went out in public, I was either getting shot at or getting into fights or being arrested by the doggone police. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And it got so crazy that I couldn't even go to public events. Like they would do like the Taste of October, right? Oktoberfest and things like that. And I would just want to go down there and listen to the music. I would just want to go down there and get me one of those big old turkey legs, right? And just enjoy the time, and maybe just have that experience. And tomorrow when I tell you that I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I don't even want the turkey legs no more. So every time those events would go on and stuff like that, I would disappear. Then what I realized what I was doing, I realized that I was really good at disappearing. I was really good at being alone. I was really good. And for anybody out there listening, if you can relate to this, let us know. I was really good at being afraid of being around people to let people get close to me,
Mm-hmm.
because life started life, right? It started life and really good on me too. And I was like, you know what? I'm just better off on my own. And I remember the first time that I said that to my younger sister. She asked me if I was coming home. I said, no. I said, baby girl, look, if as much as I love you, I said, I'm better off on my own. I saw the look in her face, like, wow, huh? I'm better off on my own. And I left. But I was always in and out, right? For like the last 30 some years, I've always been in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever she needed me, I was always there. I at least tried to make sure that I was there for her, and things like that. And I haven't always been a best big brother, but here lately, she's allowed me to a second chance to be that big brother for her and things like that. And we have a really wonderful relationship. But I say that to those individuals out there, you may can relate to what I just said. Don't be afraid to be a part of life, right? The healing aspect is a part of it. Don't be afraid to let go of those things that keep you safe, right? The trauma that you have endured, you will have to address those. Because what I found as well, too, Demarra, is that if we don't address those things, we pour that into other people.
Mm-hmm.
Not willingly, but we do it because hurt people, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I don't think that most of us are actively setting out to harm people, right?
Right,
I
right.
think that we have to have outlets to deal with the turmoil on the inside of us if we haven't adequately addressed it. And healing is a choice, and I really appreciate you sharing your story, Tony, because it's a testament to what can happen when we choose to live life differently. And so many people, as you said, that are listening can probably relate to feeling like they're on an island.
Mhm.
I just read a James Baldwin quote that says something to the effect of that you think that the world is just against you until you read stories. Because
Yes.
you realize, now these are he sounded much more profound than I'm sounding right now. But ultimately, what he was saying is that all the pain that you've endured, there are people out here who've endured the same kinds of pain.
Yes. Yes.
And one of the things that is so pervasive and destroying about trauma is the fallacy that we're alone, the fallacy that nobody understands us, the fallacy that the world is against us. Because when we experience pain, what happens to the heart closes.
Mm.
So in order for the heart to open again, we have to heal it, right? So one of the things that I say to God often is that keep my heart open enough, keep my heart open, no matter what happens, with wisdom. I don't want my heart to be so open that anybody can come in and just trample on it but I want my heart to be open enough that I can love and I can give love, right? I want it to be open enough to where, as Willie Nelson said, that I know when to hold them, I know when to fold them, I know when to walk away, I know when to run. Help me have enough openness in my life to live, because the living allows us to keep rising, to keep learning. There's a segment in the Four Agreements where this gentleman who's meditating, he has a meditation master, right? Like, how long will it take me to get to enlightenment if I double my practice? If I practice, for 8 hours, and it was double the time that it would have taken him before. And he said, I don't understand, master. Why would it take me, if I practice for 8 hours a day, why is it going to take me 20 years to get to enlightenment? And the master said, because you're meant to live. You're not meant to be sitting up and doing meditation for 8 hours a day. You're
Right.
designed to live life, because this is where the gold lies, the richness lies, the knowledge lies in the people. Every single person that we come in contact in life is a spiritual teacher for us.
Yes.
And that's why the moment that your sister is talking and you have this internal reaction and you go back to the loss of your cousin who was so near and dear to your heart, right? Because she was your spiritual teacher in that moment. And so we don't get to decide the who, the what, the where, the when, but what we do get to decide is to say yes to the practices that help us to have a spiritual base, so that when the lessons come our way, we have enough buffer and enough resiliency and enough wherewithal to be able to learn what we need to learn and to rise and do it over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because as we've already established, it never ever stops.
And let me ask you a question though, because as someone in the field, dealing with those struggling with their mental health and things like that, you know, how would you correlate helping those individuals navigate that mental health area, right? To try to unblock themselves so they can live a more finite life, right? And I started doing some research on this, and actually putting a lot of things into practice. Although I know I'm still a student of this thing, I will always be a student of this thing because I love it that much.
Same.
Right. You know what I'm saying? I love how everything intertwines with everything else, you know? And when it comes down to mental health, a lot of people really, they really would push it off to the side, and not really think about it because it's not really talked about. Right. So when you have someone who's blocked like that in their healing that puts up walls, but you realize that their mental health is maybe one of, well, not maybe, is one of the main things that they need to start working on and healing. How do you have an approach on there to help them?
So first and foremost, I mean, people have to want help.
Right.
And so one of the things that I say often is that it's a choice. And no matter what you choose, like, I'm going to love and support you. Right now, what that love and support looks like for myself and to keep my own sense of self intact in the midst of being around people that potentially have the ability to harm me. Right.
Yes.
And so what I would say is that the most important thing that a practitioner can do, it's not even the skill set. Certainly trauma informed and all of that is very important. But more than anything, it is about the psychological safety that we create. Because if people know that they're in a space of safety, that they're not being judged, that they're being seen, that they're being heard, that they have autonomy, which is why trauma sensitive yoga is so powerful, because we're talking about helping people to reclaim their sense of power. To reclaim their sense of agency, because what does trauma do? It extracts power from us. We feel very powerless in the midst of our trauma, which is why the quote by Peter Saying is so true, that people don't resist change, they resist being changed.
Mm, mm.
So if people want to change, they are going to change. There's going to be all kinds of support for them to change, right?
Right.
If we're talking about what is the job of the practitioner, the job of the practitioner is to center psychological safety above all. Because the relationship between the healer, and I'm using that in quotation marks because I believe that we are all healers essentially. But if you come to me to get mental health healing, my sacred work is to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power to ensure that you feel seen and heard and valued every single time you are in my presence. Every interaction that we have. That is the baseline. If we can do that, and you couple that with the skill sets, with a trauma informed approach, with, holistic modalities that are research based to help people to to recover from trauma,
Mm-hmm.
you're unstoppable. That's all you need in order to help people to heal, essentially. People have to be willing, they have to want it, and they have to want it more than staying the same. And then you have to have a practitioner that loves people, that is invested in seeing people to heal and to liberate, and they get out of their way in order to ensure that happens.
Rachel put a comment up here. I'm gonna let you answer this one. This was directed to you. She says, "Your passion in speaking is truly inspiring." I totally agree. Right? Have you always had this intensity, or is it something that blossomed through your experience with grief?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Rachel. And you are looking fly in that picture, Queen. I just have to tell you that.
Right? She's a good.
Go girl.
She's definitely good people.
I would say that I have always been passionate about the underdog, which has included me, right? Because in many ways, trauma can make us feel like we're the underdog. It can make us feel that we're not seen, that we're not heard, that we're not valued. We're, absorbing all kind of messages about what our worth is. And, as a Virgo, we're about the scale of justice. So I'm sure that's a part of
this is why you and I get along. But, if we ever ride each other, we're going to have to fight it out too, right? My younger sister is a Virgo. No, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
No fighting. All the love.
Tony,
all of the love. All of the love.
I'm telling you right now, it's all out of love. But we will have to fight it out. I mean, you're gonna whoop me and everything, but I'm not gonna.
Not even a little bit. But yeah, I mean, so I would say that, but as I have gone deeper on my journey to understand trauma, both outside of myself and trauma within myself, and the deeper that I've gone on my journey to understand those things, and the deeper I've gone on my work to liberate myself and to liberate the world, I think that passion becomes more and more ignited because I see what's possible as we center these practices. I've seen what it's done for myself. I've seen it when it's done for so many other people. And I really want to make sure that every single person on the planet who says yes to healing and liberation has the access, the wherewithal to be able to do that. And so thank you for that beautiful question coming from such a beautiful spirit.
My next question would be, when did you start putting everything together? Like you saw the connections in developing those tools, right? To help not only aid you in your journey, but also how to, helping others, in their journey as well. Because I think that just makes sense. And I preach this to people all the time. If you see me doing all of these different things, right? Don't think that I'm all over the place. It's all part of the same thing. So, and what I mean by that, I am a grief coach, right? Now, through my experience, I have been an alcoholic. I have, I used to struggle with suicidal ideation, even try to attempted to unalive myself twice, right? And the last time I was almost very successful. I have been homeless. I have struggled with my mental health and things like that. So when in the field that I'm in, we're working with those men, I take all of those different things. I became a recovery coach. I became a mental health practitioner. I got my certification as a grief coach. I became a suicide interventionist, right? And I began to use that in order to work on the total person. Not just bits and pieces of them, right? Because I never wanted to be limited. As you said, creativity never dies, right? I never wanted to be limited in how I could serve other people. When I realized that I was a true servant, true to my core, I said, you know what? This just makes sense to me. Now on the outside looking in, you would look at me and go, "Ooh, wait, he wears a lot of hats." I really don't.
Mm.
I only wear one. I only wear one. It just has a lot of arms.
Hmm. Yeah, I can resonate so much with this. I love this question because I believe that many people um, feel that way about me, right? Like, oh, you're doing all of the things. And the one hat that I wear, like you said, Tony, right, is about the healing and liberation hat. And
Hmm.
I have many pathways by which that I can support people to get there because of my lived experience, and because I'm deeply committed to holistic support for people to really tap into their ability to heal themselves while also tapping into external supports as we need it, like a massage therapist or a life coach or a leadership coach or whatever it may be for us. And what I will say is that the right people understand that, right? The right people don't even question that, because whether it's me providing Reiki to someone or teaching a yoga class or working one-on-one with a client doing leadership development or doing organizational wellness support work or training people on vicarious trauma, all of it is connected to the whole of getting as many individuals to a state of healing and liberation that I can. That's the mission. And everything that I have done has been purposeful, as you've described, Tony. It's connected to my values. It's
Right,
connected to my mission.
right.
It's connected to my own practice, right? So if I write about something, if I talk about something, you can be rest assured that not only have I read about it, not only am I trained in it, but I'm actually living this stuff, right? Like I am not. And so when people ask me this, I get this question a lot, like what sets you apart from the masses, right? There are so many people out here doing the work. And I don't believe in competition because abundance says that there's enough for all of us to go around, right?
Exactly.
And that nobody's going to do it like I do it. Nobody's going to do it like you do it, Tony. You know, you and I could be giving the exact same talk, and guess what? It could be delivered completely different. The content could be exactly the same, but the way we deliver, the stories that we share, posts that we use, how we enunciate things, the ebonics that's shared, all of the things, those are things that make me uniquely me and you uniquely you and us uniquely us. And but what I also know to be true is that everybody who's in the space of healing and liberation is not doing the work of healing and liberation, which is where we started this
Hmm.
conversation. And what I can, and you know, and I can say this, but I live this. Anybody who knows me, right? Anybody who follows me, they know this. I live this stuff. It has transformed my life in ways that I can articulate, in ways that I would never be able to articulate. And it's still transforming me even right now as we speak because of this conversation, because of the time that I spent meditating and in Reiki this morning, and the time that I'm going to be spending outside in nature in just a little bit, right? Every day, every moment, every thought is an opportunity for us to rise more into who we are and the ways in which that we were curated to serve the world, which is why when we think about the people that we aspire to the most, these are not linear people. These are people that are multifaceted because our design is multifaceted,
Right.
right? We are
Yeah.
not supposed to flatline. We are not supposed to only have one way of being, one job that we work at for 30 years. Now, let me be very clear. I'm not downplaying anyone who has made that choice for their lives. If you've been in your job for 30 years and your job is giving you joy and you feel like you're exactly where you need to be, only you can decide for yourself. But
Mhm.
what I know to be true is that we are all meant to evolve all the time. We are all meant to shift in our thinking. We are all meant to start things and stop things. That is our natural design.
Right. Yes. Yes.
If we are doing the work of evolution. And if we're not doing the work of evolution, that is absolutely okay. But know that that's not actually where how you are living at your vibrational level is not the vibration that you're supposed to be living at. Because we are all meant to do a multitude of things. We are all meant to have strengths in a multitude of things. We are all meant to birth beautiful things that are impactful in this world. And it's our job to ascertain what those things are.
I like that. I was sitting here as you were speaking. I love the way you speak, by the way. But I was looking at that picture behind you, lady
Mm,
with the afro over there off to your right
yeah.
there. I was like, that's a beautiful picture right there.
Do you know who that is?
I do not. Well, I'm looking at it from an angle, but
Sure,
if
sure. It's Angela Davis.
okay, okay,
Yeah. And so she's definitely, when I think about, healing and liberation, she's at the top of that for me, right? And fighting for justice and her methodology and her messaging and all of that. So definitely one of my sheroes.
that's beautiful. I was about to say that's probably you back in the '70s, right?
You know what, Tony? This is like I'm pointing over here because it's like it you well, yeah, it's my hand is in the direction of my artwork. I feel like it embodies me. In fact, all my art, I've been collecting art for about 15 years
I
now.
love that.
And I've bought art mainly from Black galleries over the years.
Hmm.
Although I have like art from an Israeli artist. In fact, the art that you see over here, that's by an Israeli artist,
Okay.
actually from Asheville, North Carolina. I'm so devastated about the what happened there.
Mm.
Beautiful people, beautiful city. But nevertheless, I feel like every single piece of artwork that I have, it embodies me in some way, right? Every time I look at it, I see myself reflected. I see something reminiscent of my life, my journey, and I oftentimes look at my art pieces, and they just bring me great joy. And in fact, that's one of the things that I invite all of us to do, right? And that's a part of living life abundantly, is to feng shui our space so that we have a positive connection with everything in the space.
Right. So you sound like my other friend Catherine Troy. She helps people deal with grief through feng shui.
Hmm.
Right. And I thought that was just the most beautiful thing. I'm gonna have her back on the show to talk about that as well. Now,
Right.
I'm glad that you brought up North Carolina because here lately, now that the election is over, there's been a lot of damage done. There's been a lot of damage done to our people, across the world, and there's been families torn apart because of the political differences and things like that. Like no one can set aside their differences to understand that hey, this is just an election, right? But we're still family nonetheless. But they're choosing to walk their own ways. There's been a lot of hurt in the world, and it's going to take a lot. It's going to take us. Like you said, I don't believe in competing. I believe in collaborating. I think that where we're truly the most effective is on the front lines with our people,
Yeah.
right? All our brothers and sisters, black, white, and they're different, don't really matter. If they need the help, we need to be there to help them, without judgment or discrimination against anyone. And my question would be, in the world that we live in today, seeing what you see, what are some powerhouse steps that we as practitioners, um, those that are heart centered in helping our communities, what is it that we need to do in order to have a bigger impact in helping those that are looking for that support and needing that support?
Yeah. So what I will say is I just blogged about this week, and my blog was named something along the lines of please don't let the grief of this election, please don't get stuck in the grief of this election.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that grief is an important part of this, for people who envisioned that the American people were going to vote in support of the values that are near and dear, particularly when we're talking about to healing and liberation,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And at the same time, the people have spoken, and this is where we are. And the Buddha talks about how Suffering happens when we resist what is.
Mm.
And so instead of focusing on what could have been, because it's just not that. What I invite us to do is to envision the world as we would like it to be and what part we can play in creating more of that world.
I love that.
Because at the end of the day, I believe that the world can always be better. Now, sure, in some ways, depending on what side of the fence you're on, in some ways, will the world be worse off? Absolutely. Will there be greater challenges for us to face in the fight towards healing and liberation? Absolutely. And at the end of the day, we can all do our part to continue to fight for the change that we want. We can continue to deliver the services and the support that are critically important, particularly during a time such as this. This is a time of greater opportunity for creative solutions. This is a time where we can mobilize the people in ways that we've never mobilized them. And so hope doesn't have to be lost unless we choose for hope to be lost. It's like, are you going to focus on the fact that the cup is half full or that it's half empty? You get to decide all of it, essentially. And the other thing that I want to say about the divisiveness that inevitably takes place when an election like this happens and when people have different viewpoints about what's justice and what's not. And I want to invite us to choose love. And that if we really want people to be in our lives, part of having them in our lives is accepting them fully for who they are and deciding how you're going to show up, how you'll engage. And I have people in my family who voted in opposition. We actually had a family chat going, a lot of painful banter, and I chose not to engage. Because at the end of the day, there is nothing I can do to change the fact that they voted the way that they did, that they feel the way that they do. And yet I love them and I want them in my life.
Right.
So we don't have to agree. We don't even have to have certain conversations. They're futile. Why would I exert my energy? Why would I hurt myself in the midst of having dialogue that is not going to yield anything?
Right.
Right? Like, why would I do that to myself? Why would I disrupt? Now, there's sometimes it's important for us to speak truth to power. And so we have to know when is the divine timing? When is it divine in terms of the person, in terms of the place, in terms of the message, right? And I'm not saying to silence, to grit and bear. I'm saying that I'm inviting people to stay in their power. What can you control? And whatever you can control, whatever you feel passionate about doing from that place, do it. Because that will give you the fuel that you need so that you can move forward with your life, so that you don't get stuck in things that are not within your control, and that you can enjoy life in the process. Because in spite of the state of the world, we get to still choose if we're going to bask in joy and find the peace in spite of.
See, I love that. I love that. And you know, one of the things that I found out or starting to discover, and I'm diving deeper into it, the more I allow myself um, to spiritually travel throughout the world in my unconscious thoughts and mind and spirit, right? Because it's infinite. It's infinite. The knowledge, the love, everything. Like I said, it's the yin and yang, right? You know what I'm saying? You can't have one without the other. But you do have to choose, right? And just know that everything in the dark, there's lessons inside of there in order for it to transfer into the light, right? And then once you can begin to do that, then you can begin to feel both sides of the cup, right? And then once it gets to a certain point, if it gets to a point to where it's leveled out at the top, this is where I say you have to be careful, because it's like the old Native American tale about the two wolves, right? In everybody there lies two wolves, one good, one bad.
Mm.
And the one that thrives the most will be the one that you feed.
Come on.
You see what I'm saying?
Oh,
And
yes, I
so
do.
you have to be careful how you feed certain things.
Hmm.
And then I began to break that down. And I saw something different underneath all of that, right? And the
Mm.
reality started to make sense to me. I am you, you are me,
Mm. Come on.
they are us, and we
Mm.
are one. This
Yes.
is our connection. This is the healing. This is where we, as practitioners, this is where we have that understanding like, hey, I'm able to be in a space with you because I'm able to connect with you on a 1+1 level.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Then we put that together. I can be you in that moment. I
Mm-hmm.
can give you the things that you need because of what you're giving me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we can both walk away with both of our cups filled with love. You just have to be able to see the difference and being able to unpack those things. But now I say that with the wolves because that is the work.
Mm-hmm.
That is the healing. That is the understanding and accountability. That is the forgiveness and the grace, right? That that is everything that we have experienced in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say the one that you feed, it depends on when you get stuck in that moment. You get to choose whether or not if you're going to allow it to make you angry or to make you better,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then, like I said, then you unpack all of that, and then it goes a little bit deeper for me than that as well, right? Because I've totally let go of the subconscious thoughts because it started to limit me.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
wanted so much more to understand not only our makeup, right? How we're designed, how we can deal with things, but to find solutions, not just for myself, but for those that are around me, those that I come in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I cannot get that from the human experience, but I can get it from the spiritual experience if I'm constantly seeking knowledge and wisdom,
Yeah.
gratitude and appreciation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've let go of the negativity and I feel that with the positivity because the frequency that it allows me to have as I move amongst this place that
Yes.
we call Earth, I get to experience you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right, on the level that you will allow me to. As
Mm-hmm.
I said in the beginning, then I can give that piece of me to you to help you get to a place to where then you could transfer yours to someone else in a better way.
Mm.
Because people will always remember the way that we made them feel. They may not ever remember our names or our faces. They may just be a blur to them at some point. People will always remember how you make their heart feel,
Yeah.
how you make their soul feel. And I say uh, um, if that becomes your mission, then make sure that you're leaving them in a place to where they can um, go out
Mm-hmm.
and have the best human experience in the world
Yeah.
through that transaction.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou that people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Right.
And what you're inviting us in is to tap into what it means to truly be empathetic. And that's to recognize that light and dark exist in all of us,
Mm.
and that what will come to the surface will be what we pour in, right? And what we recognize when it shows up, right? Because there are dark parts of me that show up all the time.
Right.
That is the nature of being a human. And I get to decide am I going to do something about that darkness, or am I going to let that darkness do something to me and to harm others? Right. So every moment, every time tragedy strikes, every time we make a mistake, every time we have a negative thought, every time we don't act lovingly towards someone else, that's an opportunity, right? To for us to convert the darkness into the light.
Right. I love that. I love that. And I know you probably got things going on today as well.
Well,
Um,
we could just keep talking, Tony, but we can't keep the people all day now, Tony. Okay, we can't keep them all day. All
you
right.
know, but that's all right because that's all part of inviting you back whenever you want to come on to
I would love that.
have more of a conversation on whatever you want to talk about and things like that. And today is just one of those days. I'm enjoying it. Like I said, we got the weather out here right now. We got the snow on the ground, and it's a beautiful sight. Things like that. It's bit cold. Normally I would say it's chilly, but it's a bit cold out there right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
You what? I got y'all on. Well, you got us on 20. What? It's 20 degrees colder where you are.
You know what? I told you before. I'm over your stuff already.
I know. I'm sending you some of this warmth. Okay.
Hey,
Some of this warmth.
the beautiful thing about Colorado is that there's a statement. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. It's going to it's definitely it's definitely going to change, right?
That's real. That's real.
And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up because I know they got things to do today. I got a support group I got to do later on today, so I need to definitely get some rest. And I got some other things I'm doing. I'm actually working on a porn right now, and it's called The Last of Many Firsts. Right? Yeah, I'm going to do something. This is something that's been on my heart since my cousin passed away, and I've had to go through my own set of almost losing myself during this process and things like that. There's been a lot of recovery, a lot of healing. And there's still healing and things like that. I'm not 100% just yet, but I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I'm definitely getting there. And this thing has just been weighing on my heart. I'm just like, I want, when I put it out into the world, I want the world to grieve and cry and be happy, but also to remember, not only remember who they are, but remember their loved ones. Mm-hmm. And that's why I labeled it the way that I did, because it was such a profound title, The Last of Many Firsts, right? And I don't want people to interpret it the way that they want to in order to find that healing path for themselves.
Yeah, it's a beautiful title.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what the words will say. And a lot came in my spirit when you said that.
It takes your mind to different places, right? It makes you think about the last of many firsts that you've ever had in your life. And if you've had multiple, right, then there's a multitude of things that you can add on to this.
Yes.
Right. And it's there to help you remember, to help you grieve and find that place of not just humility, but humbleness and gratitude and appreciation. For the life that you have right now, and for those that have impacted you that may not be here right now.
I love that. I love that. Well, I will be stay tuned for that, and you already know. However, God, universe, source, creator sees fit for us to come back together. We're going to come back together. We're together.
You already know. We already know. We're right here. And with that being said, with everyone out there who have been tuning in, thank you guys for tuning in. For the ones who've been sitting back just listening, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Rachel, thank you for the comments and being active in the conversation and things like that. We love that. We love having your comments and being able to answer those things for you and things like that. So thank you for that as well. For everyone else, if this is your first time tuning in and you're tuning in on Facebook or something like that, head over to that YouTube channel. It's right there down below, right there. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification for me so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. Guys, give a big round of applause to my guest, Demarra, and the conversation that she had. I will be putting her information into the description here soon, so you guys be able to reach out to her and things like that. Now, with that being said, Demarra, tell people how they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So folks can check out the book and speaking and things of that nature at demarrawest.com. My nonprofit, Be Well Beautiful People, can be found at bewellbeautifulpeople.org. And folks can also follow us on Instagram at Be Well Beautiful People as well. So any of those platforms are good for me. And folks can subscribe to our e-news. That's how they stay up to date in real time about all things that we've got going on within Be Well Beautiful People. We send that out about once a week. And I do have an Alchemizing Trauma for Community Impact series that is going to be launching actually this next week. So the second week in November, one episode per week over the course of 9 weeks, and featuring Detroit leaders who have alchemized their personal and community trauma. And they're doing really, really amazing work in Detroit and beyond to light up a fire in this world. And so you're not going to want to miss that.
Most definitely, guys need to tune in to that. There's going to be a lot of surprises coming and things like that. And I'm really excited for it as well. Now, Demarra, before I let you go, if you could leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
That you're worthy of living a life that is rooted in abundance in all forms. That no matter where you came from, no matter how much scarcity that you have experienced, including financial poverty or being traumatized in, one way or more, that healing is available to you, that liberation is available to you, that you have the power to co-create your life, that you have the power to seek out the support that you need as you're building your own internal capacity to support yourself on this journey towards living life on your own terms in the ways that you choose. There are no limits except the limits that you put on yourself. So go on out there and do your work to co-create a beautiful life. Ashe.
I appreciate that. Thank you again. Much love to you. For everyone else out there, the same to you. Thank you for your support. Love you guys as well. We're going to see you guys in the next episode, okay? We got a lot of great things coming up. So a quick update, the magazine is still a go. Things like that, I'm slowly but surely get myself back to 100%, but we are still making it happen. As a matter of fact, the update for the Global Grief Conference, as you guys already know, April 25th, 26th, and the 27th. We start at 7 o'clock, and we go all the way until 7:30, 8 o'clock that night on all 3 days, okay? And all 3 days, we got different things going on. We got live music, we got live comedy, we got animation being done for the children out there who's going to, was going to be some voiceover work being done over there as well. We got practitioners from across the world here for you. All right. So tune in at that time, and we're going to be doing things leading up to that as well. Okay. So don't get it wrong, and don't forget that every other Saturday I am facilitating a resilience group out here in Fort Collins in Colorado. For you men out there, if you guys want to come, it's called the Resilience Program. It is free to attend. Come out there and begin the steps to your healing. Okay. You don't have to grieve alone. Come be surrounded by other men out there, and be supported, and and just feel the brotherhood. Okay. Because we're here for you. And they're there for you as well, right? So we're willing to walk with you no matter where you at. This, whether it's not mental health, if you're dealing with suicidal ideation, if you're dealing with addiction, we are there to walk with you and give you that support to help you through those moments. Okay. And with that being said, you guys, this is going to close out this episode of the Let's Talk About It podcast. We're going to see you guys in the next one. All right. You guys have a great day. Peace.
Bye, everybody.